Good evening, everyone. If you don't know, you should know. My name is Rameez Khan, and I am a filmmaker and a film critic. And it's been a while since I stepped into the movie theater. It's been a long while since I stepped into the movie theater. And the first film I saw while stepping into the movie theater was the highly anticipated film called Tenet. Let's get down to it.
It's reversing the flow of time. Doesn't us being here now mean it never happened?
Tenet is a film directed by a visionary filmmaker named Christopher Nolan. We are all familiar with his work. He, of course, directed Memento, the Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, and the works Interstellar, Dunkirk. This time around, he has partnered with people who he hasn't worked with before. These people are John David Washington as the titular protagonist. We have Robert Pattinson as Neil, Elizabeth Debicki as the love interest, and of course, filling in the boots as the villain this time is Kenneth Branagh. He plays the terrorist named Andrei Sator. This film involves a whirlwind of ideas such as nuclear war, time travel, and reverse engineering the entropy of a object. That object also can be humans in the film. And how these things come together could be very interesting, and it is interesting. Sadly, only till the half of the film or until the second act of the film ends. The trademarks are there. Christopher Nolan's messing with time as a structure of narrative, men in dapper suits, big scale action set pieces, a killer soundtrack. Fun fact, for somehow with Travis Scott this time, that is something I thought I would never see. And finally, inspiration from one of my favorite and one of Christopher Nolan's favorite film, Heat. This film had the potential to be a Matrix-like event, a film like The Matrix. However, it is bogged down with excessive exposition, some really poor dialogue. I'm not saying that excessive exposition is good, but Christopher Nolan has done exposition a lot in most of his films because the ideas are a bit too much for a random person to just sit down and accept. So you do need exposition. And Christopher Nolan did exposition a lot in Inception and in Interstellar. It worked out fine over there. The only issue over here is the exposition in Tenet is quite boring. And if I had to compare this to the scenes of Ariadne making a maze and showing Cobb how good of a maze she can make, or the explanation of the black hole in Interstellar. Yeah, that was weird. But it's just not as interesting. There is a sequence in which we see the entropy of a bullet changing. You know, bullets usually fall. They don't come back into the gun, which was one of the cool scenes of the film. But it's just not as visually entertaining as it was in Inception. Remember the scene in Inception when the cafe started blowing up and all the vegetables were flying in the air? There's nothing as interesting as that when it comes to the explanatory stuff in this film. I did speak about the dialogue. It's really poor. It's like film school level poor. I mean, the end of this film, John David Washington's character, who is the protagonist, who's also named the protagonist in this film. Yeah, he doesn't have a name. It ends with him saying, "I'm the protagonist." And the film ends. I mean, that is how you want to end a film, on that note. It was just not massive levels of cringe, but I'd be lying if I did not cringe at that just a little bit. And it truly is a shame because the film does have a hold on you, quite a strong grip on you until the second act. The end of the second act is spectacular. It's in the third act when the film becomes a rambling mess. The high point of the film, as I've been saying over and over and over, is the end of the second act and this action sequence which far supersedes the plane crash which took place earlier. It involves a convoy being tracked and shipped without the convoy stopping the move. How do you stop a big convoy? You bring an even bigger convoy. There's a fire truck, there's a garbage truck, there's a bus or something. And all these cars just emerge on this convoy. They block them and they just jam into each other. Very reminiscent of one of my favorite films called Heat, in which we see all the gang members, collaborating with each other through walkie-talkies to make sure the job goes swiftly and smoothly. It's that level of dedication. It's very well shot as well. We get some beautiful helicopter shots. Just my only nitpick of that scene would be that the roads were seemingly empty. It should have been a bit more crowded, but oh well. That does not take away from the scene being absolutely spectacular. As soon as I came home, I searched for it on YouTube and I watched it over and over and over again. Robert Pattinson and John David Washington are good together. They do not feel alien when they're speaking to each other. There is a little bit of wit. There's a little bit of cockiness in both of them. and they work well together. Robert Pattinson's performance, I would say, is a bit better. He supposedly modeled this performance after Christopher Hitchens, I believe. And John David Washington, although good, he does have a great on-screen presence. I just wish that he emoted a bit more. There are scenes where he's getting shot, there are scenes where he's getting beaten to a pulp, and it's just an expression of Christopher Nolan, I guess, should have let him go a bit more. His performance does seem a bit restrained at times, and monotonous at times as well. Kenneth Branagh as a villain is a hit or miss. I did personally enjoy his performance of him being a villain with a thick Russian accent. I just don't know if it was the right casting choice. Kenneth Branagh was great in Chris Nolan's last film, Dunkirk, as the commander on the Dunkirk beach. I just don't think it was a smart move to get Kenneth Branagh over here. That role would have been more interesting if it was, I don't know, in the hands of Ed Harris, or I guess Anthony Hopkins. They come from Christopher Nolan's brother's TV show, Westworld, by the way. Some of the editing is also very poor, and I'm not talking about the action sequences. Over here, I'm talking about how the scenes end. When a big scene ends, you're supposed to make sure that it ends, and not just jump cut or hard cut to another location. And then at the end of the second act, as I was praising earlier, the scene ends on a very weird note. After John David Washington's car is burnt up, spoilers, he just magically wakes up at another place. And I get it, what they're trying to do. He has no burn marks or anything, but just elongate the scene a little either. But I'm not saying that this is confusing. The confusing parts over here are in the lack of writing and the lack of interesting exposition. The editing is just a bit jarring. And again, getting back to the editing, Christopher Nolan does insist on having everything being told on one frame. There are no usages of split screens. He tries to do that with the editing. I do believe if he experimented a little and went a bit crazy, the film could have been salvaged in the third act. The third act is a mess. I guess if you're trying to make me watch the film twice, it works. I was, all right, wait, what's going on? Everyone's wearing a mask also, by the way, in the finale, and it makes it even much harder to point out who's who. Everyone's wearing a mask and yelling. What the hell's going on? Overall, Tenet isn't a bad film by any means, but it's not a great film by any means either. Tenet is what it is. Tenet is Christopher Nolan's first above average film, and it pains me to say this because he's one of the best directors working in the industry today. Tenet gets a final score of 3 out of 5. It felt really good to watch a film in the theaters though, and I'm glad that Tenet was the first film I got to see in the theaters during the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you so much for watching, people. If you enjoyed my video, my review, even if you hated it, I welcome all sorts of dissent and criticism on my reviews. Please leave it in the comments below. But if you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon as well. Thank you so much for watching, people. I truly appreciate it, and